Told you.
Well, folks, if I look exhausted, it's because I am. I'm over this cloud bullshit. In case you haven't been noticing, a transatlantic cable has been cut, and I imagine it was probably Boris Badenov or Natasha Romanoff or one of these vodka sipping sons of bitches who decided to do this. And because my job revolves around and lives in the cloud, amongst other things. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen that Chris Machowski original, The Cloud is just somebody else's computer, you're wrong. Because that happened, my life is now more complicated than I make it for myself. So, here we are. Some quick announcements before we pass it off to the hammer to do some hammering on who is getting hammered. By the way, Neon Temple drinking game, if you're watching at home, every time the term hammer is said, take a shot. Next week we have the Kraken Hour with Trey and Tremere. I will be not in the state because this is the nature of my existence. Not in the state. The week after, Crypto Derp is talking about how he made. He posted this. He made about $200,000, which counting for inflation is about $30. So, enjoy your Happy Meal, Crypto Derp. B-Sides Orlando. If you're not going, you're wrong. Let's support our friends, our beloved Little John Singer, who we have known for a very, very long time. He's the best of singers, my favorite Hebrew, aside from Danny. And he, as you know, runs B-Sides St. Pete. But it's not only that. You see, or not, B-Sides Orlando. There's too many B-Sides going on here. I think, honestly, like Bernie Sanders said, we have too many B-Sides. We just need to combine them into one super B-Sides with a central committee and a chair, and we just do it that way. But aside from supporting your friends, the real important thing that's happening at B-Sides Orlando is Dr. Sunny is teaching the forbidden arts of API hacking. Nobody's teaching this. I've been looking. I've been checking. I will be there with multiple bells on. Literally, I'm going to have bells on.
All right.
So if you are not going to the API hacking workshop and you feel underskilled or you work in offensive security and you don't know how to hack APIs, look at yourself, look back at you again, look in the mirror, look at yourself again, you suck. So stop sucking. Go to Dr. Sunny's class at B-Sides St. Pete. There is B-Sides Orlando. I'm making Freudian slips here.
It's okay.
We'll put it down.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm traumatized. Go to B-Sides Orlando. Support your friends. There is no reason why Dr. Sunny should not have a completely filled up classroom. Half of it with at least Neon Temple folks holding up signs that say Sunny 316 and shit. No reason that shouldn't be happening. If it doesn't happen, then our final guild night, and this is a thing we're gonna do. Our final guild night for the year of 2022, we are going to take Crispy, hold him down, and cattle prod him for every person who did not show up to Dr. Sunny's talk. Please save Crispy. He's tired of the cattle prod. He doesn't want it anymore. So, if you care about Crispy and his well-being, you'll go to Dr. Sonny's Talk just as much as if you care about your own well-being and your own career advancement. You go to Dr. Sonny's Talk. Capiche, capiche. Excellent. With that said, we have 2 slots open for November. If you feel like speaking, or if you're tired of seeing the same revolving faces who are contributing to the Neon Temple every month, let's see something new. You know, if you have an interesting hack or an interesting skill set, or even just an interesting rant or manifesto, reveal it to the guild. Let's see what happens here. Be the content that you want to see, folks. If not, then we'll do like, I don't know what we'll do, but if you dislike it, it's on you. Past that, I think we got nothing else going on. We're working on having an even bigger, even better guild New Year's Eve shoot for the 3rd year in a row. We're working on that. Hopefully we can get ahead of that in time to where we can really do it how we've wanted to do it, with like some really interesting stuff. Also, I'm hearing from our field reporters that maybe we might sponsor a seat or two at Dr. Sonny's API hacking workshop. Stand by for what dog and pony show we're going to require out of that. It's going to be a literal dog and pony show. The best person to have the best dog and pony in that order.
Like maybe like a dog on top of a pony, a dog riding a pony. I mean, you know.
It could even be a mini pony wearing a dog.
Yeah, mini
there
pony
you go. I
wearing
like
a
that.
dog costume, or it could be like, homeschooled can be the pony and Laszlo can be the dog, and we'll just make them give each other piggyback rides or something, and or we'll grease them both up, and whoever catches them and holds them for more than 3 seconds gets the seat. We'll figure that one out, folks. But, yeah, we got that coming up. And then, as usual, stay tuned for our annual Guild State of the Union. Less politicized, more exciting, with more fistfights and more wrestling matches than your average State of the Union. That'll be coming up at the end of the year. Past that, I don't have any other notes, manifestos, or screams into the void that I'm supposed to discuss here, so we'll pass it on to the rest of the evening. So how are we, Joy?
I'm good. How are you?
Transatlantic cable, cut, stressed out. Yeah.
You know what? You can't save the world.
Whenever that's part of my job description. So, tonight's talk is the uncomfortable truth. I can think of many uncomfortable truths, like, for instance, we're all going to die. Half of you don't have life insurance policies. If you're getting married and share the same bathroom, you're probably in for a struggle or something. What uncomfortable truths are we discussing tonight?
We're going to talk about the challenges for women and men in cyber.
Okay.
The gender issue.
The gender issue. Okay. Now, I understand you are coming from a particular interesting perspective, because not only are you technically proficient, you are also businessly proficient. Yes, that's a word. Fuck you.
I don't think it is.
I'm pretty sure it's not. That's okay. You made
Okay,
it up.
the coach's challenge flag is on the field here. We're going to need a review of the play. So you have both of those highly sought-after things here combined into one hammerific package. We'll put that on a shirt. So what perspective do you think that affords you, and where do you want to take the conversation tonight?
So this all kind of came about because we had a couple of streams that had some questionable things that happened, particularly towards the end of them. And then there were some comments that were made in the Discord channel, and I just kind of said, hey, that's really not cool.
Okay.
And I just sort of left it. Then a bunch of people chimed in. Actually, it started with men chiming in. We're like, yeah, we kind of get that. We have this problem at work. We don't understand kind of how do we deal with this. You know, what should we say? What title should women have? How do we do things that are gender neutral? Some women chimed in and said, hey, maybe there's some challenges with kind of the guild overall, not the program, but like apprentice, journeyman, master, right? This is where it's going to get weird, because some people who are women would be offended by journeyman, right?
Sure.
Versus journeywoman or journey person or whatever you want to do. I personally don't care. This is the challenge. You're not going to, I'm different, you're different. Every male's not going to share your point of view. Every female's not going to share my point of view. Right?
So we have to put everybody in a collective. I like this idea.
We're not going to become communists at the end of the day. That's not going to happen, okay? But but the reality is we probably should have this conversation, right, to make a decision on opinions from the whole guild, right? It's not about me or about you, right? This is a membership-based organization. Everybody's here. And so the goal should be to talk about, hey, it is an uncomfortable truth, but it's stuff we all have to deal with every single day.
And I think you carry an even more interesting perspective aside from having those two identities, mainly because...
Because my chair keeps going to the ground, which is very interesting. So it's like, cool.
You got the chair tonight.
I am not a foot shorter than John, just so we're clear.
I don't know about that one.
We'll switch it.
Yeah,
You want to stand up? I can show you I'm not a foot shorter than you.
Okay, second coach's challenge. Where I was going with this, we can blame... well, I guess we'll figure out what to blame
I don't
the chair
care.
later.
Yeah, whatever.
But there are three of us who are left over from a previous idea.
Oh, that. Okay.
And, well, hang on. There's a method to my madness with
All right.
this here. So you have seen the concept of a guild and the concept of what this thing has evolved into. You've seen it since the beginning.
Sure.
And so you have that interesting perspective of being on the train since the very beginning, since it was initially formulated. I'm sure what it is now doesn't look like that initial idea, for better or for worse.
That's okay.
And I'm sure you also have a interesting perspective, because one thing that this guild likes to do is cater to hackers, and it's impossible to cater to 100% of hackers, because
True.
We are individualistic. We value autonomy. We value decentralization. So you have how do you cater to a group of that? And this isn't me. That's more of a rhetorical question. I think you, me, Trey, Tremere have sat in your office at UT for a long time. Trying to really figure this out. And so I'm really interested to see what comes out of this conversation.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
All four of us are very different people.
Yeah.
We have very different backgrounds, right? We have different skill sets. There's some overlap in some of them, but it's also very different. The reality is, in cyber, right, we have red team, we have blue team, we have purple.
You're gonna make crispy froth at the mouth or something.
What? Okay.
He's all about, there is no red team or blue team, it's all purple, and if you're not purple teaming your environment, then...
I'm not talking about your environment, I'm talking about people.
Okay.
Okay? I agree with that statement from an environment perspective. But we have people who are proficient red teamers. We have people who are proficient at the blue team. We have people who are purple because they came up in one discipline and learned another discipline.
Okay.
And so now they have both. Then we have some of those people who maybe have backgrounds in compliance, and some of the other ones who maybe have backgrounds in product development. There's all these different aspects of what this is. And today, cyber isn't this thing that sits in a silo anymore. It touches every aspect of our lives because everything is connected at the end of the day. And now physical security has met digital security because of every IoT device on the planet and everything that's watching you everywhere you are, all around the world. So the reality is, it's all kind of this giant sea. To Crispy's point, yeah, it's all kind of purple, no matter where it is that we are. Everything.
Same.
You're sitting next to Tremere. Be quiet. I'm like,
Yeah, right? Speaking of, communalists, I love how the blue teamers can't separate themselves for more than 5 minutes.
I'll go through the CISO. Unless you're doing espionage or...
All right, folks, Crispy's had more than 2 drinks already, so forgive him. Now,
the point is, right, so to your point, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. But the goal is, right, some people who... Let's say you're a great red teamer. You should learn blue team too, because it's going to make you better at being a red teamer at the end of the day, and vice versa, right? If you just think that magically you've stood up this DMZ that no one in the world can get through, you're an idiot, because at the end of the day, they can. And so the reality is we want to have those skills kind of transfer, but there's also should be space for everybody, right? So if you could have nights that are red team nights. You can have groups that are red team. You have groups that are over here. You can have groups that are PG-13, and you can have groups that are R-rated, right, on the other side. The goal should be to serve your members, and your members are diverse.
Now, expanding that to an overall industry and an overall culture. First off,
Really?
Nope. Now, expanding that to an overall industry and an overall culture.
Yes.
With that, where I think the cybersecurity industry differs from a big portion of corporate America is this common identity of us all being in it together, and the overall idea of building a better mousetrap independent of a corporate brand. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure I follow you. So give me a little deeper
Okay,
explanation.
so what I mean by building a better mousetrap independent of a corporate brand is it's all about the practice of security. And that when somebody finds something heinous, as opposed to any other industry, when somebody finds a really heinous vulnerability or a really heinous business practice, like Mudge, for example, at Twitter, that security-minded focus obliges you to scream that into the void as loud as you can, as often as you can, because it's about something more.
Instead of just trying to make money from
Yeah, like Dr. Sunny said.
So I think that's true, but I think how you do that can matter. Because it can affect that company. So if you're working for a company, there is an obligation there. Not that you shouldn't report exploits or that they shouldn't be put out there. You absolutely should, because that's for the greater good, right? It's not just for the good of fixing that problem in that corporation, but if someone else can learn from that and mitigate that risk later in a different organization, then you want that to happen too, right? So it is that there is that greater good component. I would argue, you know, you've also got forensic accountants who would say the same thing. There's other people that would do things for the greater good. If you look at ESG in corporate America today, right?
What is ESG?
What is ESG?
Yes.
So our environment, right? Our socialist and our governance, right?
Okay.
So social conscious. So things like DEI initiatives stuff would fall into that social component.
Okay.
We all understand climate change, I think. Hopefully we have people that understand climate change in this room. And then governance, right? Which is doing the right thing, acting with integrity, transparency, those types of things.
Okay.
So you have that represented today, and it's taken a much bigger path now because people care. People started looking. For a long time, people didn't look, right? But when you start looking, now corporations have to care because it impacts stock price, or customers won't buy from you if they think that, you know, there's a reason, right? We wouldn't buy from someone that we knew was exploiting children all day long, every day, right?
I mean, we drink Coca-Cola.
Okay. You get my point, right? There's a conscience. People have a conscience today.
Oh, speaking of exploiting children, new iPhone.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
that one can be like eating up 10 ways to Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have that. But I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that yes, they are looking for things for the greater good. I don't think that means that we still don't have different proficiencies. I don't think that doesn't mean that we don't want to learn from each other, or that it isn't our obligation to educate other people who don't know better.
Okay. Now, do you think that this idea of now we have corporate responsibility? Because if you look at where we started off with mercantilism in the 16 and 1700s, like the East India Company is a great example of they
really
refer
bad.
they refer to it as the Great Leviathan historically, which is pretty badass. But now, okay, you're saying that these corporations and these large entities have a responsibility and a obligation not only to its shareholders but to its employees, to the people who live around its headquarters. So everything's becoming a lot more interconnected. Do you think that this change is happening because of goodwill or because of shame?
Both.
Okay.
So it depends on the corporation.
Okay.
Very true.
Okay. So I guess where I'm going with this is going back to that gender question. I know me personally as both a pseudo-entrepreneur, quote unquote, and a technical person. Like my team lead in my 9 to 5 is a woman, and it's
And yet you survived. It's amazing.
well, it's not where I was going with that, but
I'm kidding. I get to give you a hard time because I know you, so I get to give you a hard time.
What I mean by that is we, at least in security, I think, because this originally started off as a male-dominated field, just like every other field.
It's still a male-dominated
Yeah.
field, just so we're clear. It didn't just
But
start off that way.
the question comes about, and where I'm kind of going with this, and I want to ask you this: where do you see the industry as a whole? So we're letting more and more and more women. And
Oh, you're going to give me a chair that I'm not in the baby chair?
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I was looking for a good window to do it, but there wasn't
Spartan
one, so-
kick the chair.
Great. Now I can actually prove that I'm not a foot taller than John. Do not touch my chair.
I was touching my own chair.
I know.
So we're letting, per capita every year, we're letting more and more women into the industry. Do you think that is altruistic, and where do you think that movement's coming from?
I'm sorry, you're letting
Yeah,
more women in the
I'm keen
industry?
on that too.
You know what okay. More and more.
No, so here's the reason I say that,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of one of the things that came up in the conversation, right? It's like, oh, we're letting you do this. No, you're not letting us do this. So, and I'm not picking on you. So if you look at this statistically, we have more PhDs,
Mhm.
we have more master's degrees, and we have more undergrad degrees than men every year. A lot more, not a little bit. From a PhD perspective, it's 68.9%.
Yeah, that's, and especially when it
Yet-
comes to election demographics, that's a really well-documented thing, that women are more well-educated than men.
Right, but here's the thing, they leave. So they graduate, they come into the field, and they leave. And not they leave a little bit, and not that they leave to go have children. So let's put that out there. There's a recent study that came out, roughly 3,980 something, so close to 4,000 women. Of that group, 900 left in the first 10 years to go have children. Half of them came back, actually 500 and just over 500. So slightly more than half came back to work. The others opted out of the industry, period, at that point. The other 3,100, however, of that 3,100, 40% of them left within the first 10 years. The reasons that they cited was unequal pay, lack of upward mobility, toxic work environment. The list goes on and on and on. So the problem is that part of it isn't changing.
Now, when you say it's not changing, are you talking specifically within the cybersecurity industry or as a whole?
I would say it is more prevalent in the cybersecurity industry. That report was specifically on STEM fields, period.
Okay.
I would also include IT in that.
Yeah,
Well,
I
cyber
think
is IT encompassing these days.
Correct.
right.
Because I lived through that, so I know what women are experiencing when you're early in your career, and you are challenged a lot. And then after a certain point, once you sort of prove that you know what you're saying, and you have knowledge, eventually the challenging will stop. It's
When you say you're challenged a lot, what does that
like,
mean?
Imagine Bruce Lee, okay?
Okay.
When he would just like walk home from after teaching a class, and then other people would tap their foot on the floor, on the ground, and want him to fight them. That kind of challenge. Like, it's a constant, you don't know what you're saying. You're trying to explain this architecture to me, but you're doing it wrong. And I will say that early in my career, I had some men that actually wanted to see me succeed, and so they challenged me, but not in a critical way, in a positive way, to basically reinforce to me that I had to know. I had to have the answers ready. I had to be better than the men. No offense.
Right.
I love men, but these co-workers of mine wanted to see me succeed, and so they basically said, when I ask you this, you must know the answer. You have to know. I'll never forget this one Indian gentleman that basically took me in a room in our job. We wrote stuff out on the board, and he said, if I ask you this, if I ask you this, if I ask you this, you have to know. And I received that, right? I mean, it takes two, right? It's not just somebody telling you, but I was receptive to that message. And so I basically worked on all my certifications. So I had like 7 Java certifications, right? So that I knew the architecture back and forth, not just how to code it.
Now, when can I follow up to that?
Mm-hmm.
So we often present this dichotomy of helpful men versus the snidely whiplash having, mustache twirling men who want to keep people down. And that's an interesting dichotomy that exists. Did you often, and I guess this question goes out to both of you, did you often encounter that dichotomy residing within the same individual?
No. I only, and I will say that, and this is early in my career, obviously. As the years go by, you sort of, people pretty much get to know that you know what you know.
Right.
But yeah, early on, it was only a handful of men that were like this. I mean, I can literally count like 2 or 3. So think about that. I've been in IT and cyber now for 30 years. So I've been challenged quite a lot. And a lot of times I knew how to fix a big problem, and I would present that, and then I would get challenged by it, and it's like, well, that's not going to work. And it's like, no, it will work. It makes logical sense. What it really boils down to is somebody asked me, as a woman, how do you want to be treated? And my answer is, I want you to treat me as a team member. I want you to see me as a cyber professional. I don't want you to see me as a woman in cyber. I want you to think of me as your counterpart. That's the biggest compliment you can give me.
I just want to kind of say, I want to chime onto that, because I hate it when people say, oh, you're a great woman entrepreneur, or you're a great woman in this. And I understand some people like that, and some women wear that as a badge of honor. I find it annoying because you said, I did okay for a girl. It's not okay, right? I want to be your equal. I want to be treated like you would treat everyone else. And I think that's what we all want. And until we get there, until that's how we see things, both sides see things that way, there's not going to be a real equality across the board.
Hold on. There's one thing that I want to address right there.
Hang on, you need the mic.
So you just made a point there. You want to be our equal, or their equal, or whoever's equal, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the problems. It's not a want. You are our equal. And so many people have adjusted the discussion that you have to prove there is no discussion. This is just a factual point.
Right.
You 100% are an equal, and no one should have to prove that in any way, shape, or form. Regardless of the clothes you wear, the biology, or any of that.
You're right.
That should be a non sequitur and shouldn't have any place in the discussion.
I mean, that's a non-controversial statement, though.
But
No, think about that.
It actually is a controversial statement.
There's a whole cognitive bias behind the fact
Right.
that one of the most accomplished women any of us in this whole room know, sitting next to you, had to say she wants to be our equal. That wasn't an accident. She didn't say that accidentally. The fact that that discussion even had, like, I see your wheels spinning and trying to think about that. That's a huge point.
Well, and I guess the reason I'm saying that's a non-controversial statement, and again, I can only base this off of where I've been, where I've worked, and who I've met. I don't know if I've ever seen, and having working for a woman right now, working for a woman when I was in the Marine Corps numerous times, I guess where I am saying that's a non-controversial statement is, in my presence at least, I've never seen this toxic, like the snidely whiplash twirling, and I'm sure everybody's, can easily say, well, that's because you're not looking hard enough, or because I, have some kind of immutable trait that I can't help. But where, I guess where I'm saying, especially within this room, because all three of us who run the, who are part of the triumvirate can agree that the moment we see any kind of behavior like that, that person's getting tossed out on the street by their nostrils.
Not true.
Oh, yeah, not true.
Not true at all.
Definitely not true.
We see that behavior in here repeatedly. The fact that we are having this session was because we saw that behavior and had to call it out. Now, what you're saying yourself is you haven't seen this. That's a classic, perfect textbook definition of survivor bias. You don't have to deal with it. You're not a woman. If you ask any woman in here, she will tell you she has to deal with it every single day of her life.
And that's not me saying it doesn't exist.
No, I understand. I understand completely what you're saying, but that's one of the problems that we have as defenders who are trying to help or be supportive, is that we don't see it, and it's often not done in our presence, and it's not something that we have to call out. It's something they have to deal with the rest of the population. And when there isn't another defender, you have people who are horribly misogynistic, and if they know you're a good guy and are going to slap them down if they're a jerk to someone, they're just nice and they're normal, and you wouldn't even realize what kind of person they are. But right, will any of the women agree that as soon as you're alone with that person, they're a whole different individual, right?
So what's interesting, and I kind of want to point the conversation back this way. So I'm seeing 80% of the men here shake their hands like I'm saying something obvious. And what's interesting, Tremere said something interesting. It's still happening here. This idea of toxic environment and everything. So if 80% of the men are shaking their heads and saying, yes, this is a thing that's happening, I've seen it, and I am a defender against this, do you see the correlation with that?
So I think that they're acknowledging there's still a problem.
Okay.
You know, after 45 years in tech, it's like a slow evolution. In the beginning, it was obvious. I worked at DAC back in the day.
Yeah.
And it was like women were just second-class citizens. And if they were in a technical field, they were technicians. They were not engineers, even though they had full engineering degrees. And it was like a slow evolution from it being overtly done to now it's covertly done, right? They're polite to your face, and the people who manage groups that have women in them have to realize it, because if they don't, then they land up losing all their people. I had about maybe 70% in one of my test groups, right? 70% of them were women, and they were the highest paid test group in Symantec. And, you know, they were the best. And so when it was a real evolution to actually change the viewpoint. And so it's really that hidden nature of what people who hide or become, it's the political correctness, right? I'm going to be correct to your face, but behind your back, I'm going to stick a knife in it. And those guys you have to watch out for. And, you know, I've flushed them out of my groups constantly.
Mm-hmm. A good example, so I'll give you a real world example of that. So we sold Cheyenne, the company that I took public, to Computer Associates. So we were bought for $1.5 billion. We were sold to a $6 billion company. It was a very interesting thing that happened as a part of this. So I had my people, and then I got a group of other people. Now, one of my VPs, who was over one of the groups, happened to be, I had a male and a female over two different groups that I'd had that worked for me before. They gave me another male VP who was inside of CA and a team that worked for him. Would you like to know what the pay discrepancy was between the men and the women?
30%. Okay, how much?
Oh, that's funny. It was $150,000 a year. It was double.
Wow.
So they were paying. I want to pay my people $150K. There's $300. So I promptly marched down the hall to the vice president of human resources and I said, I can't. Like, I don't even know what you people are doing here, but like, the inequality here is out of control. And oh wait, this other person is responsible for far more work, who's being paid half the salary and delivering a completely different product. Like, makes no sense. They're more experienced. There's all these other things. Like, there's no way this can be justified. I nearly got fired, which I wouldn't have cared. They could have fired me. I could have cared less at that point in time. But it took this act of God and going all the way up the food chain to the second person in charge of the company to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, they didn't see any issue with this. I don't know. I think that's a pretty big deal, right? If you think about it at the end of the day. It doesn't always happen that way, and there are situations on the other side. I've also, like when Sonny was talking about this, I've had a couple of guys in actually in the same company. It's interesting. I had bought his company, then he was there, and he got moved into a different role. He saw something happen one day. I saw it. It's how I chose to deal with it versus embarrassing 15 people in the middle of a room, which I thought was the wrong way to deal with it. He's like, do you want me to go and say something? I'm like, oh no, I don't need someone to fight my battles. But this is the difference in what Sonny was talking about when people are really young. So this came up at the other place.
Oh yeah.
At the other
I know
place.
exactly where you're going with this. I remember that.
And we were talking about the fact, and somebody's like, oh, well, it needs to be handled in public. And I'm like, here's the problem. Somebody who's 24 in this industry or 25, they're at the beginning of their career. And while they may be having more problems because people choose to challenge them more and treat them differently than they would treat Sonny or I today, that doesn't make it right. But those women are far less likely to make a big deal about it because it impacts their career for the next 25 years. There are people like me who've never cared, don't care, I will say it, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an anomaly. That's not typical behavior of women in general. It's also not the best behavior if you want to move up the corporate ladder. It's a little bit different being an entrepreneur where it's like, okay, if I don't like this, I'll take my toys and go home. That it is trying to work your way up in a field, because what you would say and what I would say if we were side by side and had equal credentials, equal everything, you would be assertive, I would be aggressive.
Okay. So
can I add to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Hang on. Do we have a mic for Dave?
I had just a few years ago, female coworker, black female coworker, military setting. She never talked in front of everybody. And I'm like, why not? And she goes, well, you're the prior service angry white guy. You can get away with saying whatever you want, however you want, in an open forum with these people.
That's just your manner.
Yeah.
It's just accepted. You come from that background. And it made me realize, because she would, everything we had to put in writing, she would eloquently put it in writing. But every time something had to be said, she never said anything. She just let me talk. Because of the reception, they never received anything she wrote wrong, because we were always together as a team. But she knew verbally, in a room full of a bunch of military officers, she would not be received the same way. You know it's true, and I know it's true.
Okay.
But it's just an inherent bias that's there, and I think that's what they're talking to. If you speak up, it's a 50-50 chance that it's a make it or break it for your career.
That's right.
So, okay, so we've been hearing for the last 40 minutes, okay, things are messed up. We heard great examples of some really, really bad stuff happening from when I know when that conversation you were just talking about, that was probably around 2019, 2020
I don't
till
remember what the
about
day was. I just remember the conversation.
yeah, till about 1930 when Laszlo first started working in IT. So I guess where I'm going with this is, okay, this is a problem. We all acknowledge it's a problem. ... Now what?
Do we all acknowledge it's a problem? That's a question, by the way.
I mean, we can line people up, but
I don't need to line people up. But I'm asking the question because I think sometimes there are challenges, right? And so I think where you're going to go is like, what's the solution? So part of the problems that we have too is, again, as I said, what Privilege thinks is okay, what AJ thinks is okay, what Sonny thinks is okay. We're all going to give you a slightly different view. Just like if I asked you what's okay versus Rab versus Tremere versus, I'm going to get a different opinion because we're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
One person would say, you can never say the F word in front of me. The other person would go, I don't care, right? You know, there's right? There's like all of these things, right, that are there. So it's hard to kind of draw the line of what's okay for everybody and what's not okay. Then when it comes to men and women, hang on, let me finish, because I just want to kind of lay this out. What we want out of people in the workplace, so if speaking from a female's perspective, how you are allowed to treat us in the workplace is different than how you are allowed to treat us if we're your wife or your girlfriend. So then sometimes there's these different signals that get crossed, and someone thinks that it's okay to behave a particular way, but maybe it's not okay to behave a particular way because the other person takes it a different way than it was intended. You know, and so there's all of these these rules and like what can you say, what can't you say, and then you have like what happened with the whole Me Too movement, right? So you have guys who are like, okay, I can't mentor women anymore. Well, that's kind of a problem if only 3 out of every 10 people are female that could mentor the next people that are coming up. Or guys are like, well, I can only do it in a public setting because I don't know what will happen if I do it in a private setting. And somebody could say that I did something, but I didn't do it, but now I'm blamed and now my career's ruined.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I acknowledge that that's reality because there are people that are wrongly accused of things. So I'm not saying you're going to fix that. But understand all of these things play into that dynamic and how we come up with a solution.
So, again, interesting scenario. So in front of me here, I have leader of numerous corporations, leader of one of the best web apps pen testing teams, and then behind the camera, I'm not going to dime her out, team leader at one of the most reputable cyber companies on earth, who puts out a shit C2. I said what I said. Put a damn GUI on it. Put a damn GUI on it.
Real hackers don't need
if you're collaborating, sure. You ever Have you ever collaborated with like new? Anyways, we'll post 9 that one. But okay,
Solve world peace later. Okay.
But okay, so we have 3 leaders here, and to your point, okay, everybody's an individual. Everybody does things individually.
We have a whole bunch of guys too, just so we're clear. So it's not a one-sided conversation.
Well,
Yeah,
but sure.
I was actually going to also bring up the fact that I've had to deal with in my workplace specifically because I was the first person approached when they were about to hire somebody in transition.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to hear from them first, though.
Well, I mean, there's this other piece.
There is another piece. You're
that affects-
absolutely right.
It affects men and women both equally.
Yes.
I promise you, we're gonna get there.
Okay.
No, but this is an interesting point. So kind of how this conversation came about. There's a few things. So there was a mention for those of you who were present or who were on the stream about what kind of prompted me was the blow up doll, and I nearly lost my mind because I'm not offended by a lot of things. I can assure you that I'm probably the least offended woman in this room because I've heard it all. That was way over the line, and those kids could get themselves in some serious trouble. And then I was like, okay, like where do we think that was okay? And then I just kind of brought something up in Discord, not about that, but there was another remark was made, and I just kind of said something. What I thought was really great, honestly, was the first person to reply back wasn't a woman. Actually, that was like way further down into the conversation. It was like 3 guys who were like, hey, we get it. How do we fix the problem? Because we deal with this stuff every day, and we want to fix the problem. So to me, that was one of the reasons. If it had just been 3 women complaining, I probably would have said, hey, you guys need to look at this. But the fact that guys kind of chimed in and said, hey, we get it, that was what actually made it worthwhile to go have this conversation. Because if it had just been 3 women, you guys would have just said, oh, they're just complaining. Yeah. I'm not saying you guys in general, like, that just would just been the thing. Like, oh, sour grapes, like, toughen up, move on. But in reality, the fact that guys said it was a problem, it's like, okay, it should be a conversation that's had between all the members of the guild. It's not a one-sided conversation that one person should be in. It's not some man-bashing thing. I don't think most guys are jackasses.
I like you said jackasses and looked at me. Damn.
Like,
no, we were friends.
No. Like, I don't think that, but it doesn't mean that we don't sometimes do things that people are going to find offensive. I'm quite sure that I do things that other people find offensive.
So, Joey.
Guys are jackasses, just some of us have all been.
Well, hang on. I want to put a pin in that. So, and
You probably should re-say it for somebody who didn't hear it.
Well, I'm going to restate it when I put a pin in
All
that.
right, cool.
So I want to address
Hang
something.
on, one sec. Where do you draw, and I guess between corporate leader and technical leader, where do you both draw the line between, or where do you differentiate between this person's being a jackass and this person's being malicious?
I don't want either one of them.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So that's exactly the point. Again, it doesn't matter, as she said. One of the things that the discussion so far is kind of going past is that we're not trying to call out anybody here as you're a misogynistic asshole.
Nope.
The point, most of us here, when addressed or asked, especially in a public setting, are going to be on our best behavior and are going to agree that, yes, we want to do the right thing. What we need to look at is the implicit behaviors, the things that you don't think of as being offensive, the things we don't want, to your question, like whether you're being actively malicious or not, that's not what we're trying to address. We're not trying to solve an HR crisis for this specific incident. What we're trying to do is to make an environment that is welcoming and supportive of women overall. The fact that we have some of the best female talent, and I say, best talent, it's not female talent, but the women that we have here, there are no new women here. We have a whole bunch of new guys. We have a whole bunch of mid-tier guys. We have some senior guys. Where are all the new women? Where are all the mid-tier women? At some
where are
point,
all the apprentices, right? That's one of the things. So if you look at this, right, the people who are in this room are all senior people that are female.
Right. We had a bunch of female apprentices. We had a bunch of other female members, and we have scared them off. I don't think there's any one thing that we can point to and said,
Right.
oh my God, if you would just shut up, why the hell did you? That's not the issue. There is something else going on that has, one, scared off the few female members that we did have in those roles, and two, prevented us from being able to get any others. So those are the kind of things that we need to look at.
So
To play devil's advocate here, actually, for John on that statement.
hang on, do you want to talk into a mic real quick?
Yeah, I'm waiting for this one.
Yeah.
So, playing devil's advocate for this, I think John was onto something, and you guys kind of like blew past him to get ahead of the topic. Because that's something I actually wanted to talk to, is there is a very real issue and a need, and I would say even personally for myself, for you guys to tell us, where is that distinction from ignorance or being a jackass and openly malicious in your eyes? Because I've been accused on both sides of those.
Yeah.
When I'm a very energetic person. Me and Dino actually talked about this the other day, where I had someone consider me and tell me like that's being a little toxic for mansplaining when I just really like what I'm talking about. So I'll overshare. Or I've came from the field I was in and working with the people I worked with. A lot of people would purposely withhold information to protect their billet or to protect their spot. So when I have a chance to share, you're getting vomit. Like I'm giving you everything. So in my eyes, I'm not being malicious. I'm doing the opposite of what I hated seeing other people do.
Can I interject on that real quick? So two things. A, again, just to clear the air, what opinions I hold and what I'm trying to do right now. Right now I'm trying to create an interesting conversation. So what... Yeah, but thank you. Whatever, again, if you want to hear what I think, we can talk about that over a nice cigar or whatever the fuck. But right now, again, trying to create an interesting conversation. To that, where I differentiated between a jackass and, a Snidely Whiplash character is somebody who's being a jackass is somebody you can, for lack of a better term, rehabilitate. You can take this person aside and say, dude, what you said was fucked up. Somebody malicious is somebody that's knows they did it. Yeah, they know they did it. They don't care they did it, and by virtue of you taking them aside, pound sand. Yeah. So that's where I was asking the difference here.
I think you can. So I'm just going to speak for me, and everybody should give their own opinion. It would be good for some other people to give their opinion on this topic.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
I think it's easy to tell when there's malice. There's body language. There's how it was said, when it was said, where it was said. Mm-hmm. There's intent when it's malicious. Mm-hmm. People wait for a reaction when it's malicious because they want to see if it impacted you or how you're going to react. Are you going to challenge them on it? Is it an environment where then they can kind of clap back in that scenario? Are you just going to take it? Because that lets them know whether they can continue the pattern or not. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think it's easy to tell.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think one thing we've all been dancing around is like the problem is not that there's a bunch of misogynists hiding in our midst that are like secretly pulling us all aside and saying nasty things to us, right? It's the good guys in this room maybe have some behaviors that make women uncomfortable, and that's really hard. Like we all have biases. We all have things we do that other people and make them feel uncomfortable. So it's not the snidely whiplashes here. There's stuff like women tend to be more interrupted than men. When women are presenting, there's more people talking in the back of the room. And you can tell, man. Like my first talk I ever gave at the other place, my husband was sitting in the back and he's like the entire front row was shopping on Amazon your whole talk, right? We saw Good Penny present a couple weeks ago, and I feel like she spoke 25% of the conversation. And there were so many people that felt like it was really important for them to have their opinion heard and to be part of the conversation when that was a presenter. That was someone who was coming to give their time to us. And I don't feel like she was paid the respect we would have given to a male presenter. So it's the women are interrupted. It's that we're assumed to be less competent. We're assumed to be less technical. Those are the types of things that I think are really challenging. And they're not coming from snidely whiplashes. They're coming from well-intentioned men who are allies in the industry. They just don't realize that they're doing this behavior or how it's being perceived.
Okay, can I latch on to that real quick?
Yeah.
So we see behaviors, especially whenever HR in the 80s and 90s was really starting to become a thing, and the industry was trying to figure out, okay, what behavior do we send somebody to training for to try and reform their behavior, and what behavior do we draw the line at? You're done, you're fired, pack your shit up and get out. And there has to be a dichotomy with that. So where do we draw that line, again, to Privilege's point, between an ally making a blunder and what you said, I award you no points, good day to you, sir. If anybody gets the reference, for fuck's sake.
To that, I would have to say there's always two sides to every story.
Hang on, sit down, Junior. I'm fucking with you.
Where is?
Understand her point completely, and I think I may have been the one you're talking about.
I don't know. Couldn't see behind the camera, right?
Voice analysis. Begin.
But also I will apologize for said actions because unbeknownst to me later, I think it was Trey and my wife, even my wife pointed out I'm on edge, but I got PTSD. I'm all fucked up physically, and I don't always realize that I'm on my edge. And then but I will tell everybody here, if I hit that point, say something to me and I will apologize. Because if I don't see the signs, I don't see that I'm elevated, and I go off, it's not anything personal, and I'm not trying to make an excuse. It's not the right way to handle it. But I mean, everybody's been in pain, especially if you've had a mouth ache, right? But it's just constant for some of us. People have talked about anxiety. So in our field, we all deal with all these issues, right? So some of it that I've seen is people are quick to bash and not openly just discuss something with the person. Even if you have to get a third or fourth person involved as mediators to be there and discuss it. Mm-hmm. Because the funny thing is I've actually been sexually harassed by another male with 2 female coworkers. And it was a GS, a government guy, and we were contractors. Guess who went and filed the complaint? Me, because I was the new guy. I didn't know what the dynamics were, but it was when my female coworker came up to me and she goes, when we were doing that today and that was said, and as soon as she started to ask me how I felt, I'm like, no, it wasn't okay. Because it was uncomfortable to me. So yes, everybody's right and wrong in certain ways, but like I said, it's not just women and men. I actually experienced with the person transitioning that it was actually the women that had more of a problem because they had to share a bathroom. And I would have never thought that to be the case.
Now, again,
that's actually a funny thing because one of the companies that I got brought in to help do the turnaround, so it was interesting. I was talking to Paul about this. They ended up hiring a person who was transgender. My issue had nothing to do with the person who was transgender. I don't care. My problem was the person who had changed to genders had hacked the government when that person was a male and had gotten in a lot of trouble. And everyone in the industry, if I said who the name is, would know who this person is.
I think everybody knows who you're talking about.
And so when that person changed their gender, my issue wasn't, I don't care what your gender is. I care that I don't want to work with someone who's an unethical human being like you. But it brought up this point. And so one of the things that came out of that is all the guys, because, oh, wait, there weren't any other girls. All the guys said, hey, Joy, how do you feel about sharing a bathroom with that person? I'm like, are we going to be in the bathroom at the same time? I don't care. You know, I said, that's not my problem. That's not my issue, right? My issue is the individual. And I think that's the difference. But it kind of is that problem. And I think, you know, what Privilege said when she's talking about people being interrupted, things like that, it is that difference. And I don't think most men that their intent is to do anything negative. I think it's a confusing area. I think that things happen, right? Like the whole mansplaining component. So it's like I had somebody said, a guy apologized to me on that. I didn't mean to be mansplaining. I'm like, I didn't think you were mansplaining. I thought you were giving me an explanation. Like, what? Don't be defensive about that, right? But I also understand, like, if you've had somebody call you out for something like that, then you do get like, oh man, like, what do I say? What do I do? Like, how do I behave? And it's confusing, I think, for all the men too.
And that was a perfect reason why I even bring that up, because I'm one of the leaders of this organization, and I'm openly saying, like, how do I traverse that? How do I work that? Because I might know the answer with you. We have a very good open working relationship, but it may not be the same for me and Sunny. Not saying it is or isn't, or
it's
for
weird.
anyone else.
But
like,
asking
you enjoy
questions.
your lateral like me and Sunny are like.
And I know that you understand when I'm talking about stuff and I'm talking a certain way. You know where the intent is, you know where I'm at, you know how I think. Everyone else isn't like that though, and now that's one of those things you constantly think about. Okay, how am I being perceived? Not just they're catching information or I'm explaining something well.
Right.
So real quick, the Stash, what do you got? By the way, if you haven't met our newest member, we call him the Stash.
Not the newest anymore.
What?
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Good Penny joined up, but I just wanted to introduce him as the Stash.
I got you,
Can you
sir.
give me a fucking break?
I got you, sir. What the crap?
Okay, Stash, go.
All right, Stash going. All right, so two quick things before we get too far gone. The first is that, at least as far as my 2 cents in regards to the issues you mentioned before with, acceptable versus unacceptable communications. And again, this is one person's perspective. Constructive versus deconstructive versus constructive criticism. And again, this is one person's opinion. This is not going to be I spit 20 words and we have a fix for the entirety of
I was really
any sort of
hoping that was
professional
going to be
field.
the case, but okay, fine.
I'm sorry?
I was really hoping that was going to be the case, but keep going.
Well, I mean, you give me 3 more of these, I'll be a miracle worker. Just give me some time.
Everybody was looking at Joy like, okay, let's solve this.
But anyway, one stone among many. Constructive versus deconstructive criticism. Do you tell the person aside and say, hey, you did X wrong, here's how you can improve that? Or do you pull the other person aside and say, hey, you did X wrong, you are complete subhuman, why are you breathing in my presence, you
The
dot, 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 dot,
not
dot.
the latter. The latter.
Yeah, you want the former.
Productive.
Because
Oh my
at the end of the day, that ultimately values them as, I see you as someone else in this field. I see you as, you can do better. I know you can do better. I want you to do better. Speaking of the doing better, there was one point that got mentioned very early on that I wanted to chime in on, and that was the issue of being challenged. And being challenged to its own, having worked for aircraft fuel system maintenance for several years, challenges came up daily, sometimes hourly. It got to the point where, it's like, okay, you got, depending on how many stripes you got, how many chemical burns you have, you know X or you don't know X. Thing is, it got to the point where it's, if you were challenged, do I know X? Yes, I do. Do I know X 1 through 9? Yes, I do. Challenge me. I am ready. It is a point of pride that I can say, I know X 1 through 10. Get back to me when you know 11. Mic drop. But point being, at the end of that rambling, is that...
Oh, but wait. I want to say something to that point. So I don't disagree with you, but here's the challenge. You can say that. You can say that. If Sunny had said that when she was talking about this, they would have been like, bitch.
Exactly.
Well, that's unacceptable.
No, but I'm telling you, that's what would have been said. at the end of the day, right? And so that's part of the thing, because it's going to be perceived, as I said, you're assertive. She would be perceived as aggressive.
So Stash.
Hold on. Stash.
Yeah, pass it back to AJ real quick. Wow, I can't believe Stash stuck. Fuck yeah, John.
Hi guys.
Stash.
So I would say part of the solution is just having the courage to have the conversation.
Right.
And remind yourself you can do hard things. You know, I say this to myself on a daily basis. It's a saying I started saying to my child who's 7, and he's hating soccer because he wanted to do it and he thought it was the best thing in the world. And then he got out there and he sucks, you know. But he's like, Mom, I suck. And I'm like, that's okay. That's where you start. You gotta be willing to have the conversation. So if somebody complained that you were mansplaining, say, hey, great. Tell me how I could have done this better because I'm super passionate. So have the courage to have the conversation. That's how we begin to solve this problem. That's why we're here tonight, right?
Yep.
So.
I'm curious though, like
So-
I keep hearing the same circle thing. It comes back to the same kind of thing that I see as the advocating. Like, and the classic example, like it was just on where she wrote a book where women were treated very differently. And the example she had was the woman who was explaining her own book on an airplane. The gentleman was going through and just explaining in entirety her book to her. And
Oh, cool.
the whole flight, she was explaining her book, his thesis of her book, not knowing she wrote it. And the entire flight, she didn't say a word about this.
That's just bad fucking timing.
But
That's a good point, though.
but that was the thing.
Now she has a topic for her
And then
next
when
book.
she
Yeah,
went
right?
and asked all of her friends about it, all the men among them said they would have said some obligatory, rash thing that we can all say would be what a man would do in that situation. It said colorful Norwoodian type painting thing where the woman's compliant and the guy is shut up, I know. And then the advocating thing just wasn't there a lot. And you see a lot of that in our thing where you're challenged on, you see it at DEF CON, for example. Girl comes up and says something about hacker stuff. Guy might walk away and disbelief, not so much this one, but in previous, it was odd to see a female hacker. And instead of that female standing her ground like a guy hacker would, laughing them off, walking away, getting their swag somewhere else, they would proceed to go into the credentials giving and the explanation of this is who I am, this is what I do, whereas you know who I am, here's my handle, and get out of there, which some women who really pushed ahead did that. But the advocating thing just wasn't a lot there, it seemed as it is. And you said that you don't want to be called a name, but okay, own it type thing. Like, I'm not a bitch, I'm just explaining to you the issue.
But again, this is what I said. Some people like me, it's just my personality, right? I'm an ENTJ. There's a lot of things about me. I'm an in-your-face person. I've always been an in-your-face person. It's who I am. That's not the case for the majority. So to put it in perspective, if you do Myers-Briggs, 3% of the population overall are ENTJs. 1% of females are ENTJs. It's kind of an unusual thing. So it is how I was raised. My dad told me I'm a girl. I was the oldest. I have one younger brother. My dad told me never let anything stand in my way of something I wanted.
Huh. Margaret Thatcher, Napoleon Bonaparte, Norman Schwarzkopf.
Like,
No shit, I can see that.
But the reality is, right, not everybody feels comfortable doing that. And it shouldn't have to be that way, right? If only 1% of the population is going to do that, that's a really big problem long term. I don't think you need to be confrontational. Do you need to stand up for yourself? Yes. But there is a risk for people very early in their career. And so, again, we're talking to very senior people that are here. So, of course, we're going to say, well, I'm not going to take that, right? I'm going to stand up for myself. But when you're 20 years old, is that the same view? And then something you said, so this is interesting. You said a girl. Now, I don't care. You can call me a girl, you can call me a woman, but there are definitely women who would not be happy with that. Oh, it's a man and a girl, or it's a man and a woman, right? So it's that kind of thing. And I know you meant absolutely nothing by that.
Well, no, I mean, they were under 21.
Oh, well, so it was maybe a girl. I'm looking at that scenario. So it's like, no, but from that perspective, but I think there are these things that we just don't think about. So I'm not saying that to call you out. I'm just saying these are kind of some of the things that some people will not be okay with and other people will be okay with.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's also something that's very hard to unlearn.
Right,
And advocating in an office is one thing. It's the conversations that happen outside of the office, because a lot, to Coach's point where he's saying he doesn't see, some of these things. Go to the golf course, go out drinking with the guys, go to the stuff after work. That's when people show their, real selves, when they start.
Any of that shit.
Yeah, well, when you get to a certain point in management, you have to do the political thing, which I hate with a passion. But you have to kind of earn that political capital because you're going to be the bad guy, so you have to be chummy. And you see the real darkness when people get a few drinks in them and they think no one's around, and they start giving their real opinions on, her abilities. And they're not emphasizing her technical skill. Mm-hmm. And speaking up in that scenario is what we need, but it's also something that, in my experience, puts a target on your back and can sometimes lead to retaliation to you. So you have to learn when and how to have those conversations with people.
No, you don't. You got to put it on the line. If you're going to be an advocate.
Hang on, can you pass the mic to Dino Dave? Yeah. I hate that I have to be the fucking mic fascist here.
Anyway, but I don't agree personally with that. If you're going to advocate, you advocate no matter what it's going to do to your career, because otherwise you're no better than them.
Well, yeah, but you choose the language you want in that scenario, or maybe that's something you have to take corrective action. But a lot of this stuff is also learned behavior. Like, I'm very neurodivergent. I don't realize or pick up on body cues. So, to Trey's point, I will talk endlessly on a topic and not realize I've made someone uncomfortable. So I've put in the chat many times, hey, if I say something that's offensive, you need to let me know, because I have to take that corrective action at that point, or I'm going to continue that negative behavior. It's something my wife has spent 13 years training me to be a better person. I didn't come this way. That's what that comment, we all start off as jackasses, but some of us can learn. It's like training a puppy. You have to, positive reinforcement very quickly and often.
Right. But I guess to your point would be, instead of bashing us, educate us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to Stash's point, when she was starting out, it was a different time that you're not aware of because you're younger. Yeah. So you weren't around. So the time she's talking about, honestly, out of her story, the one thing I keyed in on was the fact that she said it was an Indian gentleman, from India, correct? Mm-hmm. And they have a big class system over there with men, women, rich, poor. So it's surprising to hear that it was somebody from that background that took her under his wing.
And I was very receptive. I wanted to say something to sort of tie in a lot of loose ends here. Reflection. I think a lot of men are receptive if you show them a reflection of themselves. One of the things that I struggle with, I will admit, is a weakness of mine, because my language of love is words of affirmation. So if you don't know your love language, read the book 5 Love Languages and know what your primary and secondary is. Mine is words of affirmation. So that is like music to my ears, when somebody says they like my mobile app or they like my book or what, that fills my love tank, right? So when I am working with men and I provide my expertise or my opinion, or I help correct something because somebody's on the wrong path, or they're looking at something they think is a vulnerability but it's not, or whatever it may be, and then that man gives credit to another man on the team for what I said, that is very hurtful. And I time and again have to weigh in my mind, do I say something, do I not say something? If I say something, will I sound like I'm complaining, I'm whining? If I don't say something, I'm not standing up for myself, and it's going to keep happening. This is the hell that I go through, because I want to be recognized. I just want to be recognized for what, like, I helped you. I wrote this program for you. You know, just say thank you. It costs you nothing. Just say thank you. You don't have to say thank you because you're a woman. No, I don't care about that. Just acknowledge my talent, that I've helped you.
Right. That's not about gender to me at all. That's just being human. And so I've had a couple of situations that were like that. And so what I chose to do is, the first time it happened, I talked to the individual separately, offline, like at a band. Because I was like, okay, if I bring it up here, then people are going to see me a particular way that may or may not be positive, depending on who they are. But I'm going to say it to that person. I've had 99% of the time, if it's unintentional, that will correct the problem. It won't happen again. However, if it's the other way around, and it happens again, then I call the person out publicly. Because I've already said this to you. You clearly understand that you're doing something to make a point, and if you think that I won't respond, then you're wrong. And I'm not saying that's the right thing for everybody, but that's kind of how I dealt with that, because I think that's fair. It's like, if you made an honest mistake, cool.
Yeah, that's not a gender-specific problem.
No, it's not.
No. So I have a question. So I guess about 15 years ago, everybody started talking about EQ so it's like the emotional quotient. And I had never seen, in the environments I worked in, until I met, at that point, my then boss. He had what I would say the highest EQ ever. And he would go in, everything would just normalize. It didn't matter who was in there. Everybody just, he's like the tide that raised all boats. I mean, the idea of, like, what do we take for everything that we've talked about since this started? What do we take from it? What's the lessons learned? Right?
No, EQ is a great thing if you think about it, right? So I work with a lot of founders. I mean, that's what I do now with other people who are founding companies, and I work with them. And I tell them up front that your EQ is equally as important as your IQ. If you're going to be a leader, understanding how other people want to receive information is equally as important as the information you give.
Now, can I interject on that real quick?
I guess.
Because one comment, I actually hear this really often at the Guild.
Yes?
Is, well, that's just how I talk, and if that offends you, fucking deal with it.
I don't know anyone who's ever said that before.
Right? No. But I've heard that come out of your mouth.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know anyone who's ever said that
if I'm
before.
being self-aware, why is everybody gotta fucking flog me? Fuck all of you.
Wait a minute, coming from the master of flogging?
Yeah.
No, I just missed
RJ, specifically RJ.
So what's the difference so there's being honest in who you are, right?
Yes.
But there's also manners in a workspace, right?
Ooh.
At the Guild, I mean, my grandmother would say that manners is the lubricant of society.
Hang on, does he have the mic?
No.
No.
So you can, all right. So you can be rude as you want. I'm okay with it because I can roll with it. But at the end of the day, in a mixed environment with people, no matter what gender, if you're rude, man, you're on your way out. I mean, there's professionalism, right? So, but this is a social setting, so we're more accepting than in a work environment.
Interesting.
All right.
But it's
You don't talk that way at work, John.
No, I don't.
Because you wouldn't have a job. So there's that.
Mind if I touch onto that one?
Go.
On top of that, in part of the social setting versus professional setting, you also have to consider, your audience, having taken a few speech classes. Consider, is it 1, 2, 10, 1,000? Is it, are they intercommunicating? Are there set points of, 10 speakers? Most importantly, who has the sway? Who all's opinion do you need to tiptoe upon? Considering like chess, in fewer words, like chess. Considering who it is you need to impress versus who you want to impress.
This also gets to not all people. Well, we all talk about equality, right? But the architect, when you're developing software, has more say-so than the junior coder, right? That you shouldn't ignore the junior coder, though, right? But people who, the architect gets more credibility. So when it comes down to in a working group, right, it's like how people treat each other, be it male or female, comes down to where they sit in that pecking order. And I don't know, I'm not a woman, right? But like I said, I'm 60-70% of my groups were women, because one of the reasons I found it was odd, because in India, I landed up with almost all women in my test groups, which really swayed the percentages, because nobody would hire them as coders in the Indian groups that I worked with, like in Veritas and Symantec. They would go through interview loops with the volume manager, the clustering group, and they'd land up being testers instead of coders. And it seemed so unfair, because they were really good at what they did.
I'm sorry, I'm getting like 14 text messages at the same time. They're all coming through on my watch. But I was listening to what you said. So I think that to me, wow, that's interesting.
And by the way, I like tests. I don't have anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
But in India, it was seen as a lower station, right?
It's true.
In Silicon Valley, it's like the tester ruling, because you had to get through those guys to actually ship your product.
But to your point, right? And when I said there's only senior women in this room, there's a reason. You guys can say it's true, not true. There's a reason that you give us the respect that you do, and we would all be naive to believe that a person who walked in with 2 years of experience would be treated the same way that you treat us, because it's just not true.
And that's actually where I wanted to go with that, because this industry is very based on hacker culture, where you have a handle and what you do, and the street cred that you have is associated with that handle.
Okay.
And yes, this is an interesting scenario where we have everybody, all of the women in this room are at the top of where they're at right now. And what do you do whenever you're put in a situation, because this industry is very built on paying your dues. And it's interesting, because we all follow that same hacker ethic, where you come in and what you're doing typically sucks, and it's supposed to suck, and it's supposed to be hard. And I know, especially within the field I work in, within offensive security and red team operations and cyber warfare, the weed out is on purpose, because we don't want jackasses.
There's a big difference between red team and blue team.
Yeah, red team makes blue team cry.
And there is
wow.
But there's the toxic kind of mentality.
Exactly.
This, like, cybersecurity's not toxic. Hacker culture, in my opinion, is toxic. From what I've been experiencing the last year, as even a guy, but I look at it from a different angle, because I work side by side women every day. And quite frankly, it's made me, I don't want to be a hacker, because I don't want to associate with that.
No, but that's it's okay. So that's an interesting dichotomy.
No, that's an opinion.
Okay.
It's an opinion.
It is
It's not a dichotomy, that's an opinion.
Yeah, it's an opinion. Well, I say dichotomy because there's people I've met on both sides of the argument who say hacker culture treats me equally and it's interesting, and therefore there's parts of it we need to examine and there's parts of it we need to keep, and then there's people who say...
Who's saying that? Your generality, is it women, men?
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Everybody?
Do you want me to name somebody, or?
I was just saying both genders.
Give me some
Yes, of both genders. That's why I said yes, because it's of both genders. There's actually a female hacker, a woman hacker that I know who is not a part of the guild. She lives out west, and she's really, really famous on YouTube. And I got a chance to meet her at DEF CON, and her attitude towards hacking and hacker culture would have probably made Dave's head spin and spit out pea soup. But Exorcist reference.
Okay, so wait. just so we're clear, like there's hacker culture. I know we're at a time. Okay. So the reality is,
Yeah, we got 30 minutes.
wearing a hoodie and sitting in your mom's basement, people think that's cool because they think that's cool.
I mean,
if you're a crappy hacker,
Yeah.
it's still not cool
Yeah.
because you don't know what you're doing
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So that's the kind of hacker culture that people think is cool. To be honest, you're either proficient in your skill set or you are not. And so it was interesting to me because you said, "Oh, Joy, like so Sunny's great at what she does. Joy's like great at business." I feel like I'm back like when Crispy didn't think that I understood what DFIR was, and he's like, "Oh my God, like she knows that, like, and she's proficient at that." It's like well, because you didn't know that because you never asked me. But the reality is, it's kind of insulting in a way, and I'm not picking on you,
Well,
but I'm just saying, kind of. I understand you meant it as a compliment. I get it, right? Because I know you. I know you as a person.
Yes, and I also
right?
did say you were technically proficient at the beginning of the talk.
You did, right? But that's the thing. It's like, I know you, but if I didn't know you and you said that to me, I'd be like, really? Cool. That's great. Now I've got another person I have to prove myself to.
Why would you say that?
Hang on, Trey's got something.
So that's that statement there about the whole hacker attire hoodie thing. I'm interjecting this one here because this is RJ's. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
This is RJ's normal off the wall question for the
Oh,
night.
for fuck's sake.
Yes.
Send it.
Stop. He chimed in on the thing. Let him talk.
So his question was pertaining to the males in the room and the way we are currently dressed. Mostly he was pointing, I want to say probably a crypto derp here and me or myself with that kind of like hacker attire look. And like, I guess the street attire, does that signal a certain way to you guys? Does that affect the way you think we're talking to you? Does that change the situation?
No, I just think you're a criminal. So it's okay.
It's fucking, I live in Florida and it's 54 degrees. I wear sandals the other 360 days out of the year.
No, to me that doesn't.
So to answer the question, RJ, no, our attire is not affecting the situation right now or is an issue.
Right.
No, but I guess I want that.
So the other thing you have to think about, right?
This is
So
one of the-
I was at UT today, right? Sonny probably came from work. Like, there's certain places we just can't go in a hoodie and a pair of, and a baseball cap. There's other places we can.
TSA.
It wouldn't stop me at TSA. That wouldn't bother me.
So one of the things that I want to address here, you talk about the hacker culture and wanting to be a hacker group, and me and you have argued about this. Like every time you bring that up, I am against it.
Okay.
If we want to grow this group, we can't depend on asking everybody to prove their pedigree. We can't be dismissive or argumentative or combative with people coming in if we're trying to build a larger community. If you need a thick skin, male or female, to be here, we are not going to grow as a group. And this is not regarding sexuality or gender or anything. But if we want to grow, we can't be asking people, right, we can't say, fucking deal with it. You don't like the way I talk, fucking deal with it. We can't be saying, well, they're just being a guy or they're just being whatever. We need, as a group, as everybody here, we need to be more welcoming. And yes, we will always be able to weed out people if this is specifically our job, the three of us. If someone is a jackass after they've come in, it is our job to protect the community. But we need everybody here.
That holds true for women too, just so we're clear. That's two sides.
Right.
I will say that most in this room do that.
Mhm.
Yep.
The stream that you took big offense to that we had a long discussion about, that night, as soon as you saw it on screen, she was blowing me up.
I'm
as
sure.
As soon as it happened.
Yeah.
So I will say that. They are, in this community, 100% doing that. We've had long talks too, quite a bit.
But I'm saying women can be toxic too, is my point,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
there's two sides to that. So
Right.
We all have
we do.
We all have.
Like opinions.
But the reason I bring this up, if we want to be a hack,
That was awesome.
That could not have been timed better if my life depended on it. But if we want,
Now you hear him how I hear him.
most of us here are good friends. Like, most of my friends are in this room, right? That is great, but if we want this to be successful, if we want to continue to grow, if we want to bring in more people, if we want to be a force in the community, we need more people. And so we need to start acting not like a little tiny cyber club that is full of cool kid hackers, because looking around, there is a massive amount of talent in this room. Okay, there is a very significant amount of the high-level cyber talent in the city now sitting within 30 feet of us, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody's going to be like that. We need new people. We need delicate people. We need people who are fragile. We need people who are uncertain. We need people who don't know how to deal with large groups. We need people who are nervous as hell to come out to begin with, and we can't scare them away by purpose or by accident.
Okay, I gotta say, the everybody looking at me thing is starting to make me feel like I'm under attack here.
You're the
I'm gonna
moderator.
stand my ass up and go back to work.
I am actually looking at Tremere, so I don't know who's looking at you.
John, let me give you an affirmation. I joined the group because of your attitude. Okay?
No.
I don't know what that's.
You're the moderator. I'm looking at you like I'm facing this way. That's what all of us need to do. And we need to make sure in the content that we are presenting, we are maintaining that face. We need to make sure that when we are hosting public streams, we are on our best behavior, realizing that people who are nervously sitting at home may be watching this and realize, holy shit, no, nope, I'm gonna go somewhere else. A lot of us are working with the 502 project where we're dealing with kids. We have to make sure that we have, like, I know myself, Trey, you, all of us would love to be able to take people from that community and bring them into ours, but we can't present content that's going to offend their parents and prevent them from ever being able to come here.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that we need to do in small doses and in larger as the community overhaul to make sure we're not offensive and that we are welcoming. We all know that there are people among us who have way more freaking street cred, okay? Dr. Sonny, you are one of my favorite people. You are awesome. I mean, we will be able to sauce that out amongst ourselves, but we still need to have places for the rest of us, right?
To your point, though, so that's one of the things I think is interesting. So, and I'll tie what Tremere said back to what your question was, like people who say, oh, it's just me, like I'm who I am. Cybersecurity is a very broad pool, right? Like there's all these different things that are in there. If we just look at cyber as a whole, right, it extends to pretty much any industry that you want to look at today. So you're going to get a broad group of people. I think that you can have a place where you can have those different groups. So if you're going to do something where you're putting content out that is colorful, we'll call it colorful, at the end of the day, why not make that an R-rated stream, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And you give a disclaimer at the beginning of that, and then it's kind of like people know what they're setting themselves up for. That would be a members only stream. It wouldn't be a public stream. And people have the choice of whether or not they want to participate. But their 6-year-old is not going to be sitting in the room with them while they're doing that, if they're watching it, if they're smart or care about their child at the end of the day. But then the rest of your content is content that actually can be put out in the public, because if you do want to grow not only the guild, but your profession at the end of the day, it's part of our job for those of us who've done this or have something, is to give back. I mean, like Sunny wouldn't give the talk she gives just to hear herself talk. Okay, she's doing it for a reason, right? And if we're doing that, we should be helping other people who are coming up through the ranks. They're not all going to know everything we know. They can't know that. if you start looking around this room, the people who are in here, a lot of us grew up in this industry. Like, we could have told you everything there was to know about everything at one point in time, because in the industry, because there wasn't as much to know. And today, that's an impossibility. There's nobody who can do that. You know, we could talk about Moore's Law and a million other things, but at the end of the day, that's the thing. So if we can help the next 25 people, whoever they are, or we can impart some knowledge to 1,000 people, that's what we should want to do, because frankly, the world needs more people like us.
And I to kind of tie this all together, I think what is definitely coming out of all of this is the idea of what do we want the guild identity to be?
What do we want the guild identity to be? But there still is also that other side of it, right? So I think we've talked about the gender component that's here, that said, hey, the best way to fix that problem, whether we're here together or whether people are at their job or whatever, is to actually have a conversation with someone to say, like, hey. And I had a great example of this. I spoke at a conference in Miami like a year and a half ago, or right before COVID started. And there were like 1,000 people in the room, and the majority of them were females. So it was very interesting. And all of them were founders of companies in the technology space. There were about 10 guys in a room of 1,000 women, so God bless them. After I got through talking, one of the guys came up and he goes, hi, you know, I'm so-and-so. He's probably in his mid-20s. He's like, I started this company. I've just hired my 11th employee, and it's the first woman. I'm like, okay. And he goes, what I want to know is, how do I make sure, because, you know, we had 10 guys before, and we said and did some things. There's like stuff, right, that I understand are no longer acceptable. How do I make sure that that happens? It's a really good question, right? And a very thoughtful question, if you ask me. And I said, the conversation you just had with me, when you have your next stand-up meeting, have that conversation with the group and simply say, I really want to make sure that everybody understands that I want everyone here to be comfortable, and that's how we're going to kind of do things from now on. So if you have a problem or you feel uncomfortable in any way or feel something was said, you need to speak up or come and speak to me directly. Mm-hmm. So it's that establishing that, hey, like, that's not necessarily okay anymore. Like, it happened over here, but not calling people out, but saying, like, hey, if you see something, speak up about it, and making that okay.
I have a question, just real quick.
Chris, what do you got?
So, first, I want to ask, I have two questions. Is what we're talking about here today, is it worse in this industry than in others? Does anybody know?
Yes.
It is. Okay, so then that leaves my second question. Okay, Crypto Derp and I were talking about his talk coming up on bug bounties and all this stuff, and I was like, man, you know, if you could get an elite group of friends together and you guys just like tackle all of these things and share the money, and he's like, yeah, that'd be great, but it doesn't happen because everybody's so secretive. People will steal shit from you.
True.
They will do all this stuff. So my question is, like, some of the things that we're talking about here in this industry, is it because the culture is so, there's no trust between anybody? So
yes.
How can there be trust between women and men when there's not trust between anybody?
I think that is part of it.
Yeah, just kind of a
inherently predatory.
Right, and so then that's kind of like, you know, other industries are obviously, societies are obviously trying to tackle this in general, but if you've got an industry that's cannibalizing itself when it's all men, then how can we, like, I don't know, just an observation.
No, I think it's true. So I think there is a point that, and yes, there is an issue there. So let me give you a couple of examples that everyone in the room will recognize who these people are. If you think about people who I think have done this well and who've talked about this topic and brought it to front of mind, Kevin Mitnick is a great person. People around here will know who that is now because everybody's talking about what Stu Sauerman, right, just made all this money. Well, FYI, Kevin Mitnick owns 50% of that company, and he did from day one because Stu gave him 50% of that company from day one. And that company would have never grown the way it has were it not for Kevin Mitnick and capitalizing on that. Kevin used to bring his grandmother to conferences. His grandmother made cookies. It's pretty interesting. I had to sit next to him at a conference one day, and he's brought me his grandmother's cookies, which was pretty cool at the end of the day. But you've also got, like, Mudge, and Mudge has done a great job of that, and he's a big advocate for women in the industry and made this an open topic. So there are people that are very high up and that are respected in our industry that have done a lot from that point.
So I got two questions. One's from me, one's actually from outside of the community, but I found this interesting, so I want to see where it goes. The first one from me, and I'm going to gear this more towards you, Sonny, since it was your example that you brought up first, with you being constantly challenged and having to know everything, and that just being a part of what it was to be a woman in tech at the time. As you're more senior now and you're mentoring the younger generations that are coming up behind you, are you still seeing that happening between the younger generation, like peer to peer, and even say a more junior leader to their junior mentors, mentees, peers, all that kind of stuff? Are you seeing that same mentality that you had from the older generation?
No, because I train all men. And
Okay.
I'm
Hang on, can we give her the mic so everybody can hear what she says?
I said I'm not seeing the same thing because I train all men. So I lead a team of men that I handpicked, and it's not because I wouldn't like to have a woman on my team, but there are no women. So do they challenge each other? No, I mean, one of the things that we cultivate in our team is we can make mistakes. And I tell my team, hey, listen, I screw up every day. So if you guys make a mistake, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it for you if I can. You know, as your manager, don't worry about it. We all screw up. So I try to cultivate an environment that is very supportive, and the guys are very supportive of each other. But I don't see them challenging each other. No, not at all.
I guess for the rest of you out there in the crowd too, if you're mentoring people currently, are you noticing the same thing similarly with the younger crowd or no?
I definitely see it.
So
between men and women still, and I don't. Sometimes I don't think it's intentional though. Just for clarity, I think it's a cultural thing that they've kind of grown up with, and there's this mentality. So it does happen. It's not as prevalent as it was, for sure.
Okay. So brings me to question number 2, and your statement there, Sonny, actually plays into this perfectly. You said there just aren't women. They're not there. They're not showing up for those interviews or whatever it happens to be, however you find your people. Mm-hmm. One of the questions that came from out in the public for this stream was, what community outreach has been done to try to specifically bring more female members to the guild? Mm-hmm. With that, my question is, how would that be perceived by you guys? Or how would the public perceive that in general if we were specifically targeting our outreach towards women? And I ask this question because I feel like, and I could be completely wrong, I'm of the opinion that our tone is very neutral. We're not specifically targeting anyone with our social media. Our actual social media manager is Alicia. It's a woman. So she's posting everything. She's doing everything. And it's not my words. She's taken some general descriptions we give her and doing her own thing. So I guess that brings it to the question, how would that be perceived? Is that something...
Would that be perceived as pandering?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, tokenizing.
Yeah, like we obviously would like to see a more mixed group, but it feels like pandering. And I don't know if it's perceived that way or if we should be doing those things.
Isn't that dependent on the message?
The branding, yeah,
not
dependent on
the content of the message
Yeah.
to go out to recruit women versus just generically recruiting people.
Are any of them getting picked up on the audio?
Oh, it's fine.
You know, I don't know that I would consider it pandering, but I also look at it, and I think that the marketing that comes out of the temple. So I'll give you my personal opinion. I think the Neon Temple sounds like a strip club. The name. I'm just going to tell you. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay. That aside, right? We get beyond the name. I'm just telling you that first thing we said. I was like, what? I'm like, okay, fine. But the marketing that I see in the message, I don't see gender in that at all. I mean, I never thought I saw anything that came out that I thought was offensive or that was geared towards men versus women versus anything else. So I didn't find anything in that was negative. I think if you're going to reach out, because this is kind of one of the things we talked about, it would be more about saying like, hey, to groups that are like YSIS or something like Witty or something where there are a lot of women who are already technical and saying, hey, by the way, we have this organization and we welcome everyone. And I wouldn't say like we're looking for women. It's like we just welcome everyone. So we just want to make you aware that we exist and, you know, we welcome you.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, that's all you need to do. If you're going to a women's organization, it's clear you guys are trying to invite women. So you don't have to be like, we're looking for women.
Right. I'm like,
There are women cybersecurity.
That's WISIS. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear about, occasionally I would listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see.
Women in Cybersecurity, that's what it actually stands for, so yeah.
And
Mostly on the West Coast. There's not a lot out there.
There's not, and usually they're associated with a university, so usually the chapters end up being associated with the university.
What do you got, Dr. Sunny?
well, I just wanted to answer Trey's question directly, which is yes, there have been efforts to target like the Girl Scouts of America, you know, and even go into the cyber camp at USF. There were several females, and I got to talk to them. And I think the important thing is that, you know, if you're a young person or you're retooling or you're trying something new, and you see somebody doing that thing that you want to do and they look like you, that's inspiring. And that's really what I'm hoping, you know, if it's a young girl or if it's a young woman or whatever, I'm hoping that that's what they see. If they see me on stream, that they'll be inspired, like, wow, this can happen, like that could be me. That's what I'm hoping.
My daughter.
Can we pass that back to Laszlo?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my daughter's she's been here since she was like 12. Now she's 15. So since she began, she's dropped network in my house. She's punched down all the plates. That was a 12-year-old project. But she can deploy. What is it? She can deploy a VM on either VirtualBox or VMware. She has her own home lab. You know,
Does she want to come on the show?
Well, she's not an E, she's an I. My daughter's an introvert, so like me. But the end of the point is like we'll go out and look for videos, and she lands up having to watch Network Chuck because she can't find women who do videos for cybersecurity for the stuff that she's trying to learn right now. So it's either that or watching IPSec, you know, listening to him. So we're not quite up to CTFs, but you know that's the big thing is like she wants to learn it, but she's also an artist. So when she came here, the Marias, I haven't seen them lately. But she hangs out with them. So
it's interesting that you bring that up. So one of the things, if you look at our industry as a whole, the majority of the people in our industry are introverts and not extroverts, men and women. So it's not a one-sided thing as it relates to gender. And one of the things that I always tell people, if they really want to kind of move up in their career, you have to get to the point where you're comfortable standing in front of a room and talking to people. It's not an option at the end of the day. Now, I get that that's not super popular sometimes, and my better half is an INTJ, and he had to force himself to kind of be that person who did that. But understanding how to communicate, you know, effectively to those people will make all the difference in the world in your career. It doesn't mean you're going to love standing in front of a room. You don't have to love doing that. You just have to get to the point where you're okay with doing it and understanding that the message that you're bringing to the table actually does have value. I think sometimes people are weary of doing that because we do get challenged earlier in our career. There's all these other things. So it's kind of like, oh, like, man, like it's one thing to get challenged, but now I'm sitting up in front of the room and somebody's going to do it. And it creates this other fear. So I think the more things we can do to help those people earlier is really, really helpful we actually, one of the organizations that I'm a part of, we actually did coding for girls and kind of walked them through, really young girls. I'm talking about like middle school age girls. And I had a couple friends of mine that are devs come in, and we showed them how coding works with beads. It's kind of an odd thing, right? But like walk them through like, oh, if you put these colors together, then what does that make? And how does that translate into what you're going to see on the screen, sort of thing. But it was interesting because it all started because I had a girl, we were at an event, who was in high school, came in, she's 16, and she asked me, she goes, I really want to work in cyber, but is it a career for women? And I was like, man, that hurts. You know, for her to say, she goes, I've heard all these things, and like, I don't want to be in a situation where it's all going to be toxic. And I was honest, because I said, hey, look, there's plenty of opportunity if you want to go after it, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it's all, you know, roses and it's all going to be perfect, because you are going to get challenged. There's going to be things, there'll be times that are difficult. But I would argue, no matter what profession you go into, some are harder. Cyber is harder. It's even harder than I think anything else on the technology field, because it is this closed environment. So people are more challenged here. But that's not the reason if you're going to let that be the reason you don't do it, that's unfortunate, because if it's something you actually care about, don't let that stand in your way.
So it's daunting to enter the field, technically, but also because of the amount of the way that women are treated versus men.
Yeah.
But it's still daunting for anybody to enter
It
the
is.
field. So when a woman shows up to get into the field, how do you convince them that it's okay, right? So I had to have a long conversation with my daughter, because she goes, well, it sounds like fun. I wouldn't mind doing it.
Right.
But then she's into research now. So we had a discussion about, what was it, Gamergate, and the way the women were treated in that industry. It's worse.
It actually is worse. You're right. It actually is worse.
So I'm sitting there trying to coach her through it, but even with her art, right? She's a great artist, but she won't show anybody it, because she's afraid of criticism, and that's her biggest problem with getting into a technical field. She doesn't.
But how do we learn if people don't criticize us?
And that's the thing. Being an I have to force myself to talk in public. I was the same way. Now the reason why I think I can talk in public is I value my opinion now, as opposed to when I started.
To caveat on that, I mean, adversity is the mother of invention. There's only so many things you can do without ultimately having to field test and be like, okay, I've got concept X. Now let me take ideas 1 through 10 that could utterly decimate concept X, run it through the entirety of it. What happens? Okay, we have the remains. We see that we have points of failure. 1, 8 through 10, fix there. I mean, I remember taking the Myers-Briggs test some time back. I was INTJ as well, and it ultimately got to the point where it's like, okay, I value, I want to feel safe and all that. It's like, now it's like, at this point, how else am I going to improve without getting put through the ringer? It's like, I need to be brought to the lowest point in order to build myself up.
Yeah, I think that the other thing, just to kind of like bring that back, so I don't disagree with you. I think that part of where we go societally, and this is kind of things that we just learn, you're going to be more comfortable with that in a lot of ways, even being an introvert, than a lot of women would. And this has to do with how we bring people up. So if you think about it, girls from the time they're young, in general, there are exceptions to the rules, but we're just going to talk about generalities here before anybody wants to tell me that I'm wrong. We're taught to be good. We're told to be good when we're little. We're taught to say nice things, to be pleasant, to please people. We get a lot of how we value ourselves out of that. It's a society thing. It's not a bad thing. Boys are taught to be tough and to not cry and to stand up for themselves. And so those things play into who we become as we get older. So boys are going to be more comfortable with criticism in general if they're raised that way than the girl who was taught to please. I can't change the world. You can't change the world tomorrow. I'm saying it because I think it's one of the things, if we really want to fix this over generations, it has to do with how we raise our children and other aspects of that too.
So one thing that's interesting about that, and that's occurred, I'd say maybe over the last 30, 40 years, and I'm the product of this, and I can think of a couple people here that are also products of this, is boys who are sons of single mothers.
Yep, for sure.
And what impact that's going to have on how they behave professionally and how they also behave towards women. I know, again, son of a single mother, I am way more emotional and neurotic than, and my fiance makes fun of me for this. I'm one of the first people to say, and okay, sure, I phrased it wrong, neurotic, whatever. Laura, my fiance Laura makes a joke at me. I say, well, what's that supposed to mean? More times in a week than a lot of people. Right. And I would say, by virtue of being born of a single mother and being raised by a single mother, I have a lot of feminine traits. Take that as you will, still an ass-kicking U.S. Marine, but take that as you will. And I guess where I'm going with this is, how is that, this is an open question, how is that going to impact and change not only cybersecurity, but society and corporate America? And we're at our limit. I think we're past 9 p.m. Yeah. So we can keep the conversation going here. I think we're going to have to kill the stream, but we'll keep it going here. And if anything, that is incentive for you to bring your tuxes down here so we can see your face. Joy, do you have any last words between Joy, Dr. Sunny, anybody? Manifestos, screams out into the void?
We love you guys, and everybody should come here and be a part of the guild that's interested in cyber.
Amen.
Come here, we have pizza.
Yep. All right, so for those of you watching at home who are inferior to those of us here, have a good night. Keep the conversation going on Discord. Please, at Joy, at Sunny, at whoever was a part of this conversation. And yeah, have a good night.